What if I told you that lust, the same force that toppled kings, could be your secret weapon? The greatest minds in history didn't suppress it. They weaponized it. Here's how.
Imagine your mind as a battlefield. Every single day, you're dealing with forces pulling you in all sorts of directions. Desires, temptations, impulses. Some are sneaky, slipping in without you even realizing it. Others hit hard, taking over your thoughts, draining your energy, and messing with your focus. Out of all these forces, there's one that's especially powerful. It's shaped empires, decided the fate of leaders, and tested some of history's greatest mind. That force, lust. Now here's the big question. What if I told you that mastering this one thing could change everything else in your life? Overcoming lust isn't just about self-control. It's about unlocking a level of clarity, power, and control over your life that most people never experience. This isn't just some random theory. It's something philosophers, spiritual leaders, and thinkers have been talking about for centuries. From the Stoics, who called it the test of a man's will, to Eastern traditions that view it as raw energy waiting to be harnessed, the consensus is clear. Lust is the ultimate litmus test of true mastery. And today, we're diving into why it matters so much. Lust is tricky because it's both creative and destructive. On one hand, it's inspired incredible art, driven warriors into battle, and fueled passion. But on the other hand, it's also ruined kings, destroyed reputations, and caused endless pain throughout history. Think about it. There are countless stories of powerful people who reached the top only to crash because they couldn't control their desires. Take Alexander the Great. He conquered huge territories but couldn't conquer his own impulses. Or Julius Caesar, whose ambition changed Rome but whose personal entanglements made him vulnerable. Even Napoleon, a military genius, let his relationships mess with his leadership. Modern examples abound too. CEOs toppled by scandals, athletes derailed by distractions, and artists who burned out chasing pleasure instead of purpose. These were brilliant, driven men, but when their desires took the wheel, they lost their focus, their strength, and ultimately, their destiny. So why does this happen? Why do even the strongest, most accomplished people struggle with this? The answer is simple. Lust doesn't play by the rules. Hunger or thirst has limits. They're biological needs that can be satisfied. But lust, it's insatiable. The more you feed it, the hungrier it gets. It hijacks your dopamine system like a drug, rewiring your brain to crave more while delivering less satisfaction over time. If you don't keep it in check, it eats up your time, your energy, and even your ability to focus and stay disciplined. Sigmund Freud, the famous psychologist, dug deep into this. He said a lot of our behavior comes from unconscious desires, especially sexual ones. When these desires run wild, they can lead to self-destructive patterns. But here's the game changer. Freud also believed that if you learn to redirect that energy, you can unlock incredible creativity, intelligence, and productivity. Modern neuroscience backs this up. The same neural pathways that drive lust can supercharge your ambitions when harnessed correctly. In short, the same energy that fuels lust can be transformed into something amazing. And this isn't just a modern idea. History is full of examples of people who figured this out. Take Nikola Tesla, one of the greatest inventors ever. He stayed celibate because he believed abstaining helped him focus all his mental energy on his work. His ability to concentrate, innovate, and create groundbreaking technology was, in part, thanks to his discipline. Then there are the Stoic philosophers like Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius. They taught that true freedom doesn't come from giving in to every impulse. Instead, it comes from mastering them. Being ruled by your desires makes you a slave to them, but controlling them gives you real power. Marcus Aurelius, one of Rome's greatest emperors, wrote a lot about self-mastery. He reminded himself daily that a person controlled by their passions is weak, but someone who controls their passions is unstoppable. So here's the real question for you. How much of your life, your energy, and your potential is being wasted on distractions born from unchecked desires? How often do you lose focus because of fleeting indulgences that leave you feeling empty or regretful afterward? And what would happen if you took back that energy and redirected it towards something meaningful? A lot of people people think self-mastery means denying yourself pleasure altogether, but that's not true. The goal isn't suppression, it's transformation. Instead of letting your impulses control you, you become the one in charge. You take that raw energy and use it to fuel. Here's the deal. Instead of constantly chasing quick hits of pleasure, the things that feel amazing in the moment but leave you feeling empty or even worse later, you can take that exact same energy and use it to build something real, something solid, something that lasts. It could be success, wisdom, creativity, stronger relationships, or just a deeper sense of peace and fulfillment. The choice is always yours. Think about it like this. Every time you face temptation, it's not just a random moment, it's a test. It's life giving you a chance to grow stronger. Every time you choose discipline over indulgence, every time you say not today to something that pulls you off track, you're building mental muscle. And with every small victory over your impulses, you take back a little more control over your mind and, by extension, your life. It doesn't happen overnight, but brick by brick, choice by choice, you create a stronger version of yourself. But let's be real, how do you actually do this? How do you break free from something as powerful and deeply rooted as lust? What tools are out there, psychological, philosophical, or even spiritual, that can help you gain control? And most importantly, what's waiting for you on the other side of all that effort? Because make no mistake, this journey isn't easy. That's why so few people even try. But the people who do, they don't just improve, they transform, they change from the inside out. Now here's the thing, and a lot of people get wrong. The battle against lust isn't just about saying no when temptation shows up. It's way deeper than that. It's about understanding why it pulls you so strongly in the first place. Because if you try to fight something without knowing how it works, you're going to feel like you're stuck on a hamster wheel, running hard but getting nowhere. But once you understand the mechanics of lust, how it hooks into your brain and emotions, you can start to take real control. See, lust isn't just a physical thing, it's hardwired into your psychology. At its core, it taps into your brain's reward system, the same system that drives addiction, pleasure, motivation, and craving. When you give in to lustful behaviors, whether it's watching explicit content, chasing casual flings, or getting lost in fantasy, your brain releases dopamine, that feel-good chemical that gives you a rush of pleasure. But here's the trap. The more you give in, the more your brain craves it. It creates a feedback loop. And over time, that loop can spiral into compulsive behavior that's really hard to break. Modern science backs this up in a big way. Studies show that overindulging in lust, especially through things like pornography or constant stimulation, can literally rewire your brain. It weakens your willpower, lowers your motivation, and even numbs your emotional connections with real people. Worst of all, it leads to desensitization, meaning the same things that used to excite or satisfy you barely move the needle anymore. So you chase more, you crave more, but you feel less and less fulfilled. It's a vicious cycle. But here's the part that most people never realize, and it's the game changer. The energy that drives lust isn't bad. It's actually powerful. It's creative energy. It's life energy. And if you can learn how to control it, to redirect it, you can turn it into fuel for something way bigger than temporary pleasure. This idea is called transmutation. And it's not just some spiritual concept from ancient books. Science supports it too. When you control and channel sexual energy, it becomes fuel for creativity, ambition, focus, clarity, and drive. History is full of examples. Leonardo da Vinci, one of the most brilliant minds of all time, practiced extreme discipline, avoiding distractions so he could focus all his energy on his work. Isaac Newton, another genius, lived a life of intense focus and curiosity, pouring his energy into discovery and learning. These weren't boring people avoiding fun. They were people who understood that mastering desire was the key to mastering destiny. This idea shows up across spiritual traditions too. In Eastern philosophies like Taoism, certain forms of Hinduism, and yoga practices like brahmacharya, they teach that preserving and transforming sexual energy can lead to enlightenment, personal power, and even higher states of consciousness. It's not about hating pleasure. It's about realizing that temporary highs can't compete with the long-term power that comes from self-mastery. Even Western philosophy is on board with this. The Stoics, like Epictetus, Seneca, and Marcus Aurelius, believed that self-control is the foundation of true strength. They argued that giving in to every impulse makes you weak, while mastering those impulses makes you powerful. Epictetus, who started life as a slave and rose to become one of the greatest philosophers in history, said it best: freedom isn't about doing whatever feels good, it's about rising above your impulses. Because here's the truth: the more you give in to your desires, the more they control you. But the more you take charge of your mind, your energy, and your actions, the more untouchable you become. So, how do you actually take control of something as powerful as lust? How do you break free from the cycle of indulgence and reclaim your energy, both mental and physical? Let's break it down step by step, because it's not as overwhelming as it might sound. The truth is, lust isn't just about physical desire. It's a primal force that hijacks focus, drains willpower, and keeps you trapped in short-term thinking. But the moment you decide to confront it, you've already taken the first step toward freedom. The first step is simply becoming aware. Most people go through life without even realizing how much lust, or any kind of unchecked desire, is controlling them. They chase pleasure thinking it's the same as happiness, or they indulge in momentary highs thinking it's fulfillment. But when you start paying attention, when you recognize the patterns and see how these impulses pull at you, you immediately gain power over them. Awareness is like turning on a light in a dark room. Once you see what's going on, you can start changing it. Next comes discipline. Now, discipline doesn't mean depriving yourself or punishing yourself. It's about taking control. Every time you resist an impulse, you're building strength, just like working out a muscle. At first, it might feel hard, but over time, your brain starts to rewire itself. The urges lose their grip, distractions fade away, and in their place, you start gaining something way more valuable: clarity, confidence, and unshakable willpower. Think of it like leveling up. Each small win makes you stronger. Here's the cool part: the energy behind lust doesn't just disappear, it can be transformed. The greatest people in history didn't just suppress their desires, they redirected that energy into something greater. Instead of wasting it on fleeting pleasures, they used it to create, build, and achieve incredible things. An artist channels it into their work. A leader channels it into their vision. A warrior channels it into discipline. A thinker channels it into wisdom. It's all about taking that raw energy and putting it to work for something meaningful. This redirection isn't just about productivity, it's about alchemy. You're turning base instincts into gold, creativity, resilience, and unstoppable drive. That's why monks, athletes, and visionaries all practice self-mastery. They know the real power lies in transformation, not denial. Now here's the big question: what happens when you truly master this force? What's the ultimate reward for conquering lust? The answer is more powerful than anything we've talked about so far. In fact, in the next part, we'll dive into what life looks like beyond desire, what awaits those who break free and step into a life of purpose and mastery. But for now, imagine this: you've completely mastered your desires. No more being pulled in a million directions by fleeting temptations. No more wasting time and energy chasing momentary pleasures that leave you feeling empty. Instead, you're standing tall with absolute clarity, your mind sharp, your will unbreakable. What does life look like from this perspective? What does it feel like to finally be free? To understand the rewards of conquering lust, we have to first talk about the cost of indulgence. Every moment you spend chasing quick hits of pleasure is a moment you're not investing in something meaningful. Every ounce of energy lost to temporary gratification is energy that could have been used for growth, mastery, or pursuing something truly great. This is why the most powerful people in history weren't the ones who gave in to every whim. They were the ones who learned to master their desires. Take Alexander the Great, for example. He conquered vast territories, but one of his advisors, the philosopher Diogenes, reminded him that true greatness wasn't about conquering lands, it was about conquering yourself. Alexander, despite all his victories, was still a slave to his impulses. Meanwhile, Diogenes, a man who owned almost nothing but had complete control over his own will, was truly free. This same truth shows up everywhere. Look at the greatest athletes, thinkers, and leaders. They don't let distractions or impulses derail them. Instead, they harness their energy and focus it relentlessly on their goal. One of the best examples of this is Bruce Lee. He didn't just train his body, he trained his mind. He eliminated distractions and strengthened his willpower because he understood that discipline isn't about restriction, it's about freedom. Freedom to act with purpose, move without hesitation, and live without being controlled by impulses. Here's where things get really exciting. When you conquer lust, you're not just gaining control over one desire, you're gaining control over all desires. Why? Because lust is one of the most deeply rooted forces in the human mind. It's wired into our biology, influencing our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. When you master it, you're proving to yourself that you can control the deepest parts of who you are. And if you can control that, what else can you control? Pretty much everything. This is the hidden key, self-mastery compound. The discipline you build in one area spills over into others, creating a ripple effect of focus, confidence, and unstoppable momentum. That's why people who transcend lust often notice huge changes in other areas of their lives. Their focus gets sharper, their confidence grows, and they suddenly have more energy, clarity, and purpose. Things that used to distract them, social media, mindless entertainment, petty drama, no longer seem important. Instead, they become laser-focused on their goals, driven by something far bigger than fleeting pleasure, the pursuit of mastery. Here's something really cool. Psychologists have found that when you practice self-discipline in one area of your life, it naturally spills over into other areas too. For example, if you resist the urge to check your phone constantly or skip that late-night snack, your brain actually gets better at resisting other temptation. Every time you say no to an impulse, you're strengthening the part of your brain responsible for self-control. Over time, this builds on itself. It's like a snowball effect. What starts out feeling hard eventually becomes second nature. The person who used to struggle with distractions suddenly finds themselves moving through life with laser focus and purpose. This is why ancient warriors, monks, and sages took self-control so seriously. They didn't see it as just about being good or moral, they saw it as a source of power. Take the samurai, for example. They trained not just in physical combat, but also in mental discipline. They believed that a warrior who couldn't control their own desires would end up defeating themselves, not their enemy. It wasn't about fighting others, it was about mastering themselves. And guess what? This applies to modern life too. If you can't control your impulses, you're basically handing over control of your life to external forces, things like ads, social media algorithms, peer pressure, or even addictive habits. You get pushed around by distractions and cravings instead of steering your own ship. But when you master yourself, that's when you become unstoppable. You're no longer reacting to the world, you're creating it. But here's the next big question. Once you've conquered lust, once you've taken control of your desires, what do you do with all that energy? What's the next step? This is where things get really interesting because the answer separates people who simply resist temptation from those who truly transcend it. And in the final part, we'll explore the highest level of transformation, the kind of state only a rare few ever achieve. There comes a point in the journey of self-mastery where resistance isn't even necessary anymore. What used to feel like a battle becomes effortless. This is the state of true transcendence, where you're no longer fighting against desire. You've risen above it entirely. But what does that look like? What happens when someone fully conquers lust? Not just through sheer willpower, but through real transformation. The answer lies in understanding raw desire as untapped potential. In every spiritual tradition, there's this idea that the energy behind our desires isn't bad. It's just powerful. It can either control you or you can learn to control it. And when you truly master it, it becomes something incredible, a source of creativity, ambition, wisdom, and purpose. In ancient Eastern practices like Tantra and Taoist energy cultivation, they talk about harnessing sexual energy and transforming it into something greater. It's not about suppressing it or fearing it, it's about redirecting it. When done properly, this practice is said to boost mental clarity, sharpen intuition, and deepen your connection to higher states of consciousness. The sages who mastered this were known for their immense wisdom, unshakable presence, and an aura of power that people could feel without them even saying a word. You see similar ideas in Western thought too, though they might be framed differently. Take Friedrich Nietzsche, for example. He talked about the importance of sublimation, taking base desires and turning them into something meaningful. He believed true greatness wasn't about indulging every whim, but about channeling inner chaos into something magnificent. Even modern psychology backs this up. Carl Jung, one of the most influential thinkers in human psychology, described this process as individuation. It's about integrating the deeper, primal parts of yourself into a higher, more developed version of who you are. Jung didn't think repressing desires was the goal. He believed the key was to understand them, harness them, and use them as fuel for growth. This is why some of history's greatest minds were able to channel their energy into creation. Nikola Tesla, one of the most brilliant inventors of all time, openly talked about how abstaining from indulgence gave him unmatched focus and mental clarity. He believed that by preserving and redirecting his energy, he could tap into states of mind that others couldn't access. But here's the most powerful realization of all. When you conquer lust, you don't just gain control over one desire, you unlock the ability to shape reality itself. Why? Because the same energy that fuels desire is also the energy behind creation, ambition, and transformation. When you stop wasting it, it builds up within you. It sharpens your mind, strengthens your presence, and fuels your ability to achieve things that others might think are impossible. Think about it. When you're no longer distracted by fleeting pleasures, you have so much more energy to pour into your goals, your vision, your purpose. You become magnetic, not because you're trying to be, but because you've tapped into a level of focus and power that's rare in today's world. So ask yourself, what could you create? What could you achieve if you harnessed all that energy for something greater? Imagine walking through life feeling completely in control, calm, clear, and unshakable. Imagine having a mind so sharp and focused that while everyone else is distracted or stressed, you're locked in on your goal. Imagine being so in charge of yourself that no temptation, no distraction, and no short-term pleasure can pull you off your path. This isn't just some fantasy. This is what happens when you learn to master your desires. See, when you reach this level of self-control, it doesn't even feel like you're missing out on anything. You don't feel deprived. You don't feel like you're sacrificing. In fact, you start to see things for what they really are. All those temptations that once looked fun or exciting, you realize they were actually holding you back. They were keeping you stuck. Because real freedom isn't about doing whatever you feel like in the moment. It's about not being controlled by anything. It's about having the power to choose your path without being a slave to impulse. And once you reach that point, once you take back control over your mind and your actions, you unlock something rare, the ability to create your life exactly the way you want it. That's the reward for mastering lust, and really for mastering any desire that tries to control you. It's not just about willpower. It's about rising above. It's about becoming the strongest version of yourself, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. This is what separates ordinary people from extraordinary people. This is what separates those who drift through life from those who shape their own destiny. So now the question is simple. What are you going to do with this knowledge? Are you going to keep living on autopilot, letting urges and distractions run your life? Or are you ready to take back control and become the kind of person who can't be shaken by anything? The choice is yours. Because at the end of the day, if you can conquer lust, you can conquer anything. And those who master themselves, they're the ones who go on to master the world. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.